and why I believe it to be very important for Cancer moons is because Cancer moons tend to be the safety net for everybody else. You tend to hold everyone. You tend to be where people refute to. You tend to be people's sort of like, yeah, just dumping grounds, not because they see you as trash, but rather as they see you as like this golden light, this like limitless well that will always hold them and will always hear them. And it's a beautiful superpower, but you want to make sure that you're lending that to yourself as well, and that you're filling up your cup so you can pour out for others as well. What is up, you guys? It's your girl, Jasmine Kylene. I am a spiritual counselor, I'm a journalist, I am a 26-year-old having a quarter-life crisis, and I hope that you are well. Do I have a booger in my nose? I don't. Okay, great. I hope you are well, or as well as you possibly can be, given the circumstances of existing right now. So I am doing a new little series on YouTube where I am intending to go through every moon placement, so every sign in every moon, every sign that the moon can be in, and talk a little bit about essentially just 3 ways that you can live in your fullest potential having this moon placement. So I've already done moon in Leo, and I asked you guys which signs you wanted to hear next, and someone said moon in Cancer, which was actually the sign that I had written down to do next, which of course is just, it's so telling. I think like moon in Cancer tends to be what I find to be like the most intuitive placement in the zodiac, one of the most intuitive placements. And so yeah, it's just like, how did you intuitively know moon in Cancer, viewer? Anyway, so yes, obviously you don't need to have a moon in Cancer in order to like watch this and take any resonance, whether there's someone in your life that is a moon in Cancer, whether you have any other Cancer placement, or yeah, whether you just want to learn more about like what it means to have this kind of placement, then there's something in this that will serve you. So I am not a Cancer moon, obviously, but I have a few people in my life that are. And one of my very close friends, I need to call her, but Milan, if you're watching this, I love you. But she is an Aquarius sun, Cancer moon, and we like there's an ongoing joke about anytime that she feels anything, it's like the Cancer placement, because the rest of her chart is very air and like very logical, but then she'll kind of like feel very deeply, and that's the Cancer moon. Anyway though, it's an incredible placement. I love it a lot. I think it's a really, really powerful one, a very intuitive one. So I'm gonna go over a little bit about like what it means to have this placement, and then 3 tips as someone who has studied astrology and experienced astrology through existing. Yeah, just 3 tips that I think would best support you living in your fullest potential and your freest, most liberated life. So yes, having a moon in Cancer is very powerful because Cancer is ruled by the moon, so it's at home in this placement. So being ruled by the moon, and of course just being a water sign in general, obviously Cancers are very emotional creatures, and especially when it's in the moon placement, with the moon ruling our emotions, they tend to feel very deeply and sort of be almost taken aback by their own emotions because of how much they can move and how quickly they can move, which honestly immediately introduces me to the first tip that I have. I just have to read it to make sure that I say it correctly. So yes, the first tip I would have for any Cancer moons out there is to ground in the present moment and not make stories out of your emotions. Now, of course, this is, and I mean, listen, all of these tips are going to be helpful for anyone who is in search of self-betterment. However, while we can all benefit from that, right, from being the observer of our emotions and really just rooting ourselves in the present moment and the physical experience of our present moment, I think it is like important for survival when it comes to being a Cancer moon. And the thing about that is because obviously, you know, the moon controls the tides, and the moon is constantly moving through all 12 signs. So there is this consistent sort of tunneling through different emotions, different themes, and different feelings, and that can feel like a shift that happens overnight, second to second, moment to moment, and so it can be a lot, and it can be very exhaustive to consistently make identities out of the feelings that you feel. If you wake up feeling one way, and you sort of like root and cement yourself, and the day that I'm going to have is, you know, this feeling that I'm feeling is now indicative of the day that I'm going to have, and then an hour later you feel a different way. You can almost resist the new way that you feel because you've sort of already made a home out of the old feeling, or the people around you can oftentimes get a bit exhausted by the different versions of you that they meet within one breath. So it's just very important to note that Sometimes feelings don't need to be understood. Sometimes feelings aren't coming from anywhere. Sometimes they are, and so it's important to have that discernment, right? So if a feeling is moving through you and you recognize, like, this is because I'm hungry. This is because I didn't sleep. This is because, you know, instead of reading before bed, I was on TikTok until 3 a.m. And so I just, like, my brain was a bit overprocessed, right? Like, recognizing when an emotion is just an organic, like, chemical reaction and letting it move through, and then also recognizing when an emotion is indicative of, like, oh, that triggered something that I've actually been invited to look at. I'm going to look at that, right? Having really crystal clear discernment with which emotions need to be unpacked and which ones need to be moved through, and which ones do not need stories and narration and narratives, and which ones actually are calling for deeper attention. And I will also say, with Cancer moons, because I find you guys to be the most intuitive placement, I would really invite you to begin to cultivate a more intimate relationship with understanding what is your intuitive voice versus what your fear's voice is, and versus which voice is irrational. Being such emotional creatures, I'm sure that Cancer moons can react to their own emotions rather than responding with logic, and so recognize which emotions and which ways so yeah, recognizing which voices are just reactions to emotions, which voice is actually your intuitive body really informing you of something, and which voice is your fear's voice, right? Paranoia. Cancer moons often are associated with paranoia because they're so aware, right? A Cancer moon will walk into a room and it's like they have fucking, like, echolocation, or whatever whales have. Maybe that is also echolocation. I'm thinking of bats. But they're able to sort of immediately sort of absorb everything around them and be really aware of what everyone is feeling. And so sometimes you can be absorbing and reacting to emotions that aren't yours, or response to paranoia of what you think another person is feeling because you're, like, in this, like, maternal role of making sure that everyone is okay, which we'll get to about, you know, that whole maternal thing. But overall, yeah, you just want to make sure that you have discernment with what you're feeling, which voice is who, and responding with intention accordingly, right? So, like, if you know it's a fear's voice coming up, calmly responding to that by saying, I witness you, I acknowledge you, but you are not the voice that I'm going to be letting drive the car today. Versus if an intuitive hit is coming through, if you know that your body isn't feeling safe in a certain place or around a certain person, or if you are feeling, you know, a ping to go do something or to create something, honoring that with intention rather than overthinking it to the point where it is, you know, sort of dry. And I think most importantly is just recognize which emotion is an emotion because the moon is in Pisces and you didn't get enough sleep and you're hungry and you're dehydrated and you're irritable, and instead of, like, making an identity out of that and reacting to that so outwardly that everyone around you, including yourself, is exhausted, just say, oh, this is coming through and it's uncomfortable, so I'm gonna go take a nap, or I'm gonna make myself a meal, or I'm gonna take some time to be by myself, or I'm gonna call on a friend and just kind of, like, let their energy refuel me. Grounding in the present moment, and being very aware and intentional about, yeah, just being responsive to your feelings rather than reactive to it, and not being your feelings but rather witnessing and observing them, would be really helpful for all Cancer moons. So yeah, ground in the present moment. I think that was the first part of the advice, but I think the more that we are present and embody, the more that we can live a more embodied life rather than one that is so emotionally tumultuous, we are often left dizzy and exhausted. So yes, because Cancer is ruled by the moon, it is often associated as sort of like the mother or the maternal sign. Anytime someone tells me that their mother is a Cancer, I'm like, oh, you had the mom of all moms, darling. So because of this, what's beautiful about Cancers is that they are so good at taking care. They're so good at tending, at nurturing. I have a friend who is a Cancer sun, and I visited him in LA, and like I often reflect back on like how well taken care of I was. Like, he picked me up from the airport, he, you know, made sure that I stayed in his room and that I had everything that I needed all the time. He was just constantly checking in on how I was, and if he's a Cancer sun, I can imagine how that comes up, particularly in partnership within a Cancer moon, right? Like your emotional well-being is directly sort of reflective of the emotional well-being of those around you, and you make sure to tend to them, which is beautiful, and I think something that humanity really should take some notes on. But shadow aspect of that, or to your own detriment, can be that you can derive a lot of your worth from what you are and what you do for other people. And I see this a lot in Cancer sun, so I will say it's it could vary depending on what your sun is if you're a Cancer moon, but overall I would assume that a lot of your worth and a lot of how you feel about yourself and a lot of your emotional security is directly derivative of what you do for other people and how you tend to their needs and how nurturing and maternal and loving you are, which is beautiful. But with that being said, it's very, very, very important to make sure that you are tending to things that are tending back to you. And this is something that I want you to reflect on in every single layer of your life. This isn't just relationships, though it is very, very, very important that you do an audit, like a relationship audit, and really look at, you know, the relationships that I pour so much of my emotional well-being and my love and my intention into, are they pouring back into me? Like, are those people that also show up for me? Are those people that also make me feel emotionally safe? Because if not, if you are watering dead flowers, it's time to move on, babe. It's time to leave that plot. But I also want to extend this into all areas of your life, right? So romantic and platonic and professional relationships, familial relationships especially, but also just like your creative endeavors, right? If you are giving something so much of your, if you're giving something so much of yourself, it's important to recognize, like, am I feeling fulfilled by this? Is this fueling me back? Does this still light me up? And if not, why am I giving it so much of myself? And I also will say, just as a piece of advice to any Cancer placements, but particularly a Cancer moon, taking care of plants or having a pet can be really, really, really helpful for you, because that is something that no matter how much love you pour into it, you're always gonna get it twice as much back. I think seeing your plants flourish the more that you tend to them with intention is something that is so healing and so connecting and grounding, which I think any form of grounding is really, really, really helpful for Cancer moons, because like I said, you guys are always sort of riding this consistent ebb and flow of emotion. So anything that makes you feel present and sturdy and rooted and secure is really helpful. And yeah, I mean, everyone knows that, like, when you have a pet, they have such a limitless source of unconditional love for you, and the more that you give them love, the more that they will really feel it and reciprocate it back. So those are two places where you can really, if you have all that excess of nurture to give, if you give it to those mediums, you'll get it back, especially if you've been feeling a bit drained from your relationships, or yeah, just feeling like the love and the intention and the energy that I give isn't met back to me. Not only should you rid yourself of those relationships, but you should also be more intentional about pouring it into plant care or pet care, or honestly, what leads me to the next point, which is taking care of your home. So not only does Cancer rule, I mean, so in the zodiac, lol. In the zodiac, the 4th house is ruled by Cancer, and is that true? Did I just make that up? No, that's true. Sorry, whoa. It's ruled by Cancer, which of course is the house that I always say rules mother, maternal lineage, right? Our ancestors, those that came before us, just home, self, inner world. I really want to emphasize the element of home, how important home is for Cancer placements, particularly Cancer moon. And the best piece of advice that I could give you as a third is to always make sure you feel at home within your physical environment, within your body, and within your relationships. Always make sure that you feel at home. And now you are the only person that can really truly testify to what feeling at home means for you, right? So like, if that means that so like on a physical level, if feeling at home means that instead of fluorescent lighting, you have dim or warm lighting, or that there's always a blanket available, or that there's a fireplace burning, or that you have really modern furnishing, you know, whatever makes you feel physically safe, make sure that your physical space is that and reflects that. I think a lot of people can kind of like survive through life and just like not really tend to the nests that they come back to. But it is so, so, so important, particularly for a Cancer moon and just any Cancer placement really, that like your physical home feels safe and cozy and nurturing. So and any way that you can, pour more intention into your room, into your home, into whatever space you have control over, and make sure that it's like safe for your soul, for your body, for your mind, right? So it's decluttered and it's clean and it's comfortable. There's soft textures, there's colors, there's natural light. Like, just make sure that it feels like a place you want to come back to, because ultimately, when I think about like a Cancer moon, I think about like a cup of warm tea and just like easing into a cup of warm tea after a long day of feeling and doing and going. It's sort of like that exhale where like you just lay into your mom's arms again and you're like, oh, nothing matters because I'm smelling my mom right now and I feel safe, right? So emotional safety and physical safety and just the element of safety and feeling cozy and at home is so, so, so important in every single layer of a Cancer moon's well-being. So yes, your physical space, but also in your relationships. Do you feel at home within your relationships? So you really want to do, once again, a relationship audit, your romantic relationships, your platonic ones, your professional ones, your familial ones. Do I feel safe to be fully myself, fully emotionally giving, but also like fully seen, fully vulnerable? Am I held in these relationships? And if these are the relationships that you are still keeping after we did the audit and the last tip with like, you know, not giving to where you're not getting back, you want to make sure that you do whatever you need to do or say whatever you need to say or implement whatever boundaries need to be implemented in order to feel at home and safe within your relationships. So yeah, only you know what that means for your individual and unique relationships, but you just want to make sure that you feel at home. And what's most important and what I really, really, really emphasize whenever I'm doing readings and people have transits in their 4th house is the element of feeling at home within yourself, within your mind, soul, and body. So you really want to look at, like, you know, when all the noise and the distraction of life is quieted and I'm with myself. When, you know, when I end my day in my bed with my own thoughts and my own body and my own mind, do I feel safe? Am I held here? Is this a cozy place for me to be? Right? So you really want to look at what are the thoughts that I'm thinking. Am I mean to myself when I'm by myself? Am I supportive of myself? Do I have fun with myself? Do I give myself grace and ease? Do I give myself time to sort of expand and unwind and exhale? Or am I at times my own worst enemy? And this is to be met with grace and compassion, because I think it's always true that the main thing that is standing in the way of us living our fullest power is us. We're always going to have some sort of hypercritical self-dialogue, or, you know, there's always going to be something that is sort of self-imposed, though bred and born from conditioning and external, you know, trauma. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's our own selves that's standing in the way of feeling safe in our bodies. And so meet yourself with compassion if you realize that that's what's happening. But ultimately, with the Cancer moon, you want to be really, really, really adamant about weeding out everything within that doesn't make you feel safe. And this can move into more physical or tangible ways of being as well, right? So like, are you eating foods that make your body feel nourished, or are you eating foods that make you feel just disconnected and disembodied, right? So really recognizing, like, how can I tend to myself in a way that makes me feel like a safe home to refute to, especially if you are in conditions where your physical home is changing or you're constantly moving spaces or relationships. If you're really like on the go, you want to make sure that you are always grounded and rooted in the home that you have within, and your beliefs and your systems and your routines and your habits. Like, do I feel safe to return back to me when I'm no longer distracted by my life, right? I think at times when we want to evade sitting with ourselves because it means hearing ourselves and facing our fears and confronting our fears, we can fill up our lives with as much as possible, right? As much activity and, you know, social outings and friends and just as much noise as possible so we don't hear ourselves, because that's when things really get real. But you want to make sure that when you're in that silence that you feel safe, that you are your own Snuggie. Which, like I said, I think is a really important tip for anyone, but why I believe it to be very important for Cancer moons is because Cancer moons tend to be the safety net for everybody else. You tend to hold everyone. You tend to be where people refute to. You tend to be people's sort of like, yeah, just dumping grounds, not because they see you as trash, but rather as they see you as like this golden light, this like limitless well that will always hold them and will always hear them. And it's a beautiful superpower, but you want to make sure that you're lending that to yourself as well, and that you're filling up your cup so you can pour out for others as well. So yes, in summation, have discernment when it comes to experiencing your feelings. What were the other ones? Tend to the people, places, and things that tend to you back. And why did I forget the third? I just talked about it. Oh yeah. And yeah, make sure that you always feel at home on a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level. So yeah, Cancer moons, I love you guys so, so, so much. I think maybe I'm meant to date one of you guys, honestly. I think Cancer placements are just so important, and I love what you do for our collective, the way that you hold everyone and the way that you are just so inherently generous and able to show up and like intentional. Like referring back to my friend that I mentioned, anytime I like tell her to like listen to a song or watch a movie or like just like recommend something out of my heart because I know that she'd like it, she will like be the first one to see it and watch it and like tell me how she felt about it. Whereas like other people, including myself, like if you tell me like this show is so good, I'm like, okay, cool. I'll never watch it. I will never watch it. Unless I'm like held at gunpoint, I will never watch it. And anytime that my friend does this, I'm just like, what a like, and it's because it's just, she just like, yeah, the love there and the intention is so deep. So yeah, I'm sending you guys all of my love. You guys deserve to live in your fullest power. And if you implement these 3 tips, I promise you, you will stand at the very least that much closer towards, closer to embodying the power that you always have. You don't need fixing, you just need remembering. So yeah. With that being said, I'm sending you guys all of my love. If you want to work with me one-on-one, you can do so by visiting my website at JasmineKylene, or JasmineKylene.com, or follow me on Instagram at JasmineKylene. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Let me know if there are other moon placements that you really want me to see, that you really want me to talk about. Oh my God, words. Otherwise, I'll just kind of keep giving them out. But yeah, sending you all my love, and I'll see you next time.